Okay.
Recording in progress.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the January edition of the Tips and Tricks SIG. Our normal format would be open forum, and then we'll lead right into the topics which I sent out stuff earlier today on an email. And with that, we can jump right on in. Does anyone have any computer-related questions or problems that they need to have solved today? None. Okay, well, Tim was telling us about this hardware that he just acquired. You want to quick give us that rundown of some new hardware that you picked up, Tim?
I didn't buy it. A nephew of mine upgraded a computer of his, so he gave me the guts. And but it's a Ryzen 5 processor. I don't know the model for sure, but I believe it's a 3000 series. It came with 32 gigabytes of DDR4 memory because his new system uses DDR5, and he got a Ryzen 9. That much I do know. He gave me the power supply with it, 650 watts, and four spinning hard drives, of which they were all different sizes. I know that one of them was dead. The smarts, I have smarts always active on my computers, and it immediately said, forget this drive, it's failed. And the other, one of the other ones is in that same computer, working just fine. I haven't checked out the other two, but one of them was a 320 gigabyte. I already had six, and I know I've got a seventh or eighth one right now. So I got about eight 320 gigabyte hard drives. Most of them are unused.
What are you going to do with a spinning hard drive that small?
Well, I can use it like a flash drive.
Yeah, I guess. Or you could, if you felt like building other machines with that and make them the OS, but
No,
it's
I
it,
don't make them the OS.
yeah, 320 gigs on a
I
spinning
started
is.
changing to SSDs in 2012 on
Mhm.
all my systems gradually. And on the boot drive, I do use some spinning hard drives for data backup on the system. Now, when I say data backup, it's an internal drive where I offload stuff accumulating on the solid state drive to the spinning hard drive for like archive purposes.
Yeah, my main use of spinning drives these days is also archive backup kind of things. But I use big ones because I have a lot of data.
Anyone else want to comment? No.
I see a note in chat from Pete.
Yeah, it's his chat saying. Pete saying, Tim, the Zoom app is not accessing my camera or audio. What should we tell Pete to do?
Axis.
And Bob
Try
is
a reboot.
asking, can you hear us?
I would do a reboot.
If,
Do
if you can hear us, you can reply in chat. Suggestion is restart.
Okay, I just sent him a text and told him to do a reboot. And we'll
Because
see.
if seven of us are here with audio and video, it's got to be on his end.
It's got to be on his end. Right.
The other possibility, if he comes back with the same problem, would be to check the up caret on the video camera in the bottom left and see what camera it says it's going to use.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the next thing.
Pete just replied, I can hear you.
Did
But-
Zoom create a new version?
Did Zoom-
Well,
Hmm.
I don't know how to answer that one because they're always creating new versions, but nothing's changed since last meeting.
Nothing has changed, and 7 of us are in here.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
Now, unless he's got a very old version of Zoom, he should be on 6.3.5. And that requires a reboot.
I put that in chat.
Don't know what to say beyond that.
Nope, told him to do a reboot. That's the best we can send is
Okay.
tell
Well,
him
if
to
he
do
does
that.
a reboot, he drops out and then he has to come back in.
He's checking the version.
But he has not done a reboot. Oh, I'm sorry, Bert, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. I had another topic if you want it.
Yeah, please do.
Seems to me like I have a whole bunch of large backup Santa's hard drives, that were like 6 or 8 gig at the time. And I remember hearing something about them changing the formats. And I was wondering if those things would still be readable or
If they were
because
they
things change over 20 years.
those are over 20 year, and trust me, the format changed a lot. Odds are you're not going to be able to read them unless you got an old system that knows how to read them, that runs.
Which is a good reason to keep an old system
I
around.
mean, I think I have everything carried forward, but
Well, see,
I was wondering about having those things.
going back to those old drives, you're talking Windows 3, 3.1, 95, 98, 98 second edition, and Millennia, which had one format. Then we all switched to NT4, which has a different format completely.
Those should be backwards compatible to be read.
I wouldn't bet on it. You got to have a
No.
controller anyhow. You got to have a controller anyhow. If you don't have a controller, that means you got to have a running system.
Well, this is true. You do if they're old
Well, they
drives
would all
ran
be
like
USB.
say IDEs or EIDEs. You have to have the controller to run those to be able to access it.
They would all be USB
Okay.
capable.
Okay. You know, the thing you could do is put them inside an enclosure or hook them up and see if they work.
Well, they're packed away for the moment, but I just was wondering about it.
The formatting is what? FAT32?
Probably just fat.
Well,
32.
yeah,
No,
back then
back-
everything would have been 32.
Back then, it would have been either fat or fat 16, maybe an outside chance of fat 32.
Possibly VFAT.
9 doubt VFAT.
Before that, you had to use floppies.
Yeah. But anyway, they're likely some kind of fat. And that tended to be rather conservative. So that older versions usually could be read at least a couple of versions up.
Well, a
But
couple
many versions up and decades later,
yeah,
the
that's
physical
where
media I'd have doubts about.
I'd have doubts about that too. Now, that doesn't mean that they're bad. You
Yeah.
can, if you cannot read them to get what's on them off, if you want to, you can just reformat them, even in a FAT or FAT 16, FAT 32 format, and they should work even in a Windows 11 system.
Well, OneDrive solves a lot of those problems.
Oh, yeah.
But you still got those old drives hanging around.
Well, I got old,
There's that one.
hey, I got old drives too. I got a 32 megabyte. I got a 120 megabyte drive.
Why?
Because there are times when I need something that small rather than take a big drive and use it just for one purpose, for one thing.
I guess.
And in fact, I took recently. I was working with an OS, and I originally didn't know the size. I didn't pay attention, and I used a 32 gigabyte drive. The image is less than 1 gigabyte, and I had a 1 gigabyte drive just laying around, so I re-put that image onto it, and now I have my 32 gig back.
Yeah, the only question to Bert is, are you going to be trying to recover any data from these drives?
Like I said, originally, yes, I
Bert,
did.
Bert is answering.
Well, I don't have an immediate plan, but as I look around boxes and boxes of stuff, I just was concerned. I didn't know what the technology changes were, because I do remember hearing something along the way that there may have been some changes in formatting or something where things that far back may not be readable.
Mhm.
But is there data on them, Bert, or they're blank?
I always forward my data to the most current stuff.
Yeah.
That's always been what I've done. Now, there's some things that are so old they can't run anymore, or they get lost. The file formatting can't carry forward, or you get a file that has a name too long for it to be able to be readable carried
Yeah.
forward.
That's the major change that took place. The original drives way back then were 8.3 file size. And then later on, and I don't remember exactly when it occurred, they went to 256 characters.
Well, I mean, there were files based on folders, folders and folders and folders, and some of that stuff couldn't be carried forward.
So, which brings up a question: what do you do with your old stuff? As Bert, like Bert says, he carries the data forward, so it's still accessible on a newer system. But what do you do with the old hardware? How long do you keep old hardware?
I've got old hardware that's old hardware.
Well, but
And
you're the old guy in the group, so okay.
yeah,
I got 55 years. What do you want?
By the way, Pete is not on anymore. He signed out a while ago. Maybe he's trying to get back in. So whoever's letting people in, please check for Pete.
Pete, the answer is, Dennis, I just let Pete back in.
Okay.
Is what I've been watching for him. That's my job here.
Okay.
We'll see if Pete's working though. So far, we don't have an audio or video from him yet. Don't know why.
If Pete came back in, I saw his picture.
Oh, you see a picture.
Right now I don't, but I did see a picture pop up for him.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Let him finish working out the bugs.
So my oldest hard drive is 2.5 megabytes,
God.
and it's this big.
All right. That's something you put in a museum.
that's what he has, a museum. Because he's got
So do you, Tim.
he's got stuff older than
32
mine.
gigabyte hard drive.
He's got stuff older than mine. I go back to 75.
Well, I got whole systems that came in 74.
So I
Like
was
I said,
kind of
you
saying
got
is,
more
what do
old
we
stuff.
do? My question was, what do we do with our old hardware and software? How much do we move forward, and how much do we keep, and how much do we purge?
I do a fair amount of forwarding also of what will run even in compatibility mode. Data, I look at it to try and determine whether it's obsolete, in which case I don't care what happens to it. Or
Mhm.
is it still relevant, in which case I'll carry that forward too.
Anyone else want to comment what they do with their old?
Well, I always thought we should make a museum, but when you tried to do that with Wright Junior College, everybody stole all the stuff that people put in.
Hmm. Mhm.
Unless you want to have a plan to create a Chicago Computer Museum.
Yeah.
Boston had one, different places have them, but it costs money.
Yes, this
They're
is
doing
does.
one in Indianapolis, I believe.
We could just charge admission into Tim's house, and that would work.
Into Bert's
My
house.
house.
Yeah, there you go. And Bert's house. Put them all together.
And Beata's
I've
house.
purged most of my old hardware already. I found that keeping most of the stuff past 10 or 15 years is just not warranted anymore. Because if you haven't used it software wise in over 10, 15 years, it's just not going to be worth it.
Well,
Data?
see, that's where too people like myself, Dennis, and Bob Premick, we have Linux, and Linux can go way back on ancient hardware and run just as good as modern stuff.
But one thing I can tell you, even with Linux, it's getting to the point where it's really noticeable if you're running super old hardware
Right.
rather than just old hardware.
Yes.
Some of the support is beginning to drop away.
Well, you also have now I'm seeing already because I've got a piece of this software. I was trying to repurpose one of my old systems, not real old, but it's old, and it wouldn't work, and I couldn't figure out why. And I thought I had a bad download. Then I thought I had a bad burning to a USB drive. No, I finally did a check, and unless you have UEFI compliance, just to install it, you also have to have the UEFI to run it as well. So I think more and more of the Linuxes will go that route eventually. It's not going to be overnight. It's going to be gradual.
What do you mean by UEFI?
Well, your system has it, I'm positive.
For those that may not know what UEFI means.
There's Pete. There's Pete.
Hey, Pete.
Okay, wait.
Idiot
Hey, Pete.
error.
Glad you made it.
He has to really brag on how warm it is out there. He's wearing a short
I'm
sleeve
not going to
shirt.
do that yet.
And all of us here are in single digits, like close to zero.
I'm not.
Okay, all right, Bob.
We were cold.
I forgot to acknowledge that the meeting was being recorded, so it kept me out.
Just the detail, slight detail.
Slight detail.
Yeah, it's just like I thought on one meeting that Tim was running, I thought I had downloaded a document from chat, and I got out of the meeting and found out it wasn't on my computer. I had neglected to click the correct button that final time.
God.
And then, you know how Tim is. You send him an email saying, the download seems to have failed for me. Could you send me the document? And he says, no. Then he sends it. Oh, he's joking.
Yeah, he's joking.
Although there will come a time it won't be a joke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I might be dead at that time.
Yeah.
How do you dispose of an old hard drive?
You take it apart and you use the platters for safety mirrors.
Yes.
Or for shaving mirrors when you go camping.
Shaving mirrors when you go camping.
Hey,
okay.
People hang those same discs by their rear view mirror in the car.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what Ed did, Northwest Chapter. This is super old, but he took some big inch platters that were no good, and he put them on the bottom of this squirrel or bird feeder to keep squirrels from being come up.
Yeah, that's the kind of platters that I was talking about that I have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with also too, I think, and I'm not positive of this. I thought I remember vaguely somebody made the musical chimes out of a few of those.
Hmm.
You got to be careful of your machining them because some of them were put on glass and some of them were put on metal.
Hmm. So
So
the
if you
core
try to
material,
drill glass, they shatter.
yeah, the core material might actually shatter and cause a problem. Yeah, I've come across one or two that actually turned out to be glass when I used a hammer.
Mhm. So does anyone else have any computer-related questions or problems that we could go into today? Tom O'Connor's fixed all of his issues. You don't have any problems with anyone trying to hack into your system anymore?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I had a problem, but I've already resolved it. And it's something I may bring up at the Linux SIG. It
Okay.
has to do with there are capabilities in virtually all the OSs. It can apply to Windows as well, I'm sure, and Mac. Uh, it's in Linux called cron, and it's normally a command line feature, meaning you got to use a terminal. But there's also RTC wake that's in many distros of Linux, or it can be added. It's like an alias for graphical user interfaces so that you can schedule when to have jobs execute or turn your system off and turn it back on. I have one. I want to turn it off at 10:30 p.m. I want it to start up, say 10 o'clock the next day. And the bad part about it is the documentation that you find in it either gets to be misleading or its syntax is so, shall we say, vague to some extent and doesn't allow certain things to be done in shifting things around that you go nuts. And I've been playing with this for over 2 weeks.
Did you say that was Linux though?
It's the RTC Wake and cron are part of Linux, but there is something akin to it in Windows and Mac OS also.
Okay, see if you could, while we're talking, maybe you could find the Windows version because I think that would be more applicable.
Well,
Is that anything similar to the task scheduler in
yes,
Windows?
yes.
So you could set up Task Scheduler to do a shutdown and a restart.
I don't know on Windows. I was doing it in Linux, but
I understand that. That's why I'm.
well,
This part here is the perplexing
usually
part.
usually on a scheduled job, if you run a command that shuts down the computer, you have to have in the same command the command that sets the real-time clock alarm to when you want it to wake up. If you don't have that, it just turns your machine off. You have to manually turn it on.
Okay, how do we do that?
I haven't gotten into Windows to do it. I'm doing it from the Linux standpoint because I'm doing a NAS type server, and
Yeah, well,
I sleep at night. So why have it on? It's consuming.
usually because, well, I'll say often servers are doing housekeeping at night. They could be doing backups to, like cloning across the drives. They could be, doing the RAID function. They could do in checks, CRC checks.
They do that during the day too, when I'm up,
Yes.
when I've got it running.
What I found is, at least on my server, a lot of the cleanup function is saved to be done at night and not during the day. And that's what
Yeah,
I was getting at.
yeah, you want some tests to be done when there aren't going to be files in use
Right,
and when the device is not active.
right.
Otherwise, you can interrupt things that you want to save or back up.
So that would be the reason to let it run. But I can appreciate, Tim, if you're not up, you're not using it, shut it down.
I mean, you can, in some applications, you can go in and see all the scheduled tasks, Windows alone set up for you, plus many of the programs you install on your computer. And if you didn't do a good job cleaning out stuff you removed, uh, a task could still be in the scheduler.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
I haven't gotten into the syntax of the Windows scheduler. That's down the road, but it will be coming even to mainnet as far as that goes. Because I usually leave a few of my systems running 24/7, but now that I've got this figured out here, I know some of the things to watch for, and I can have my Windows desktops, as an example, that I leave running, shut down at night too.
so which is better for the PC? Leaving it running or shutting it down, at least periodically? Pros and cons.
Do you want a Civil War again, like 1860s?
I was kind of stirring the pot.
I like this stirring. Let's get some opinions from the group, Tim, before
It
we
won't
chime in.
matter. It's always a 50-50 split roughly between the two camps, leaving it
Okay.
running or leaving it, turning it off and turning it back on the next day. I guarantee you, this has been a topic for 20 years or more.
More than that.
I can tell you one thing. Technically, you're not doing terribly much damage by leaving a computer running unless there's a power event.
Well, there's also the fact that, say, for example, let's assume all of us were in the European Union. The cost of electricity is very high, and they do want to do a shutdown like this and turn it back on only when they're going to be likely using the computer, and they have to be awake to do that, unless somebody knows how to do computer work while sleeping.
That's what Wake on Land is for.
Yeah.
Hurt?
Yeah, I do. I shut my computer down every night, but my data comes through my iPhone anyway. So I can see what's important that's coming through in emails and things like that. And I could also, get to some of my applications.
So
I
you're
also want to say that I just had a situation where a friend had couldn't talk to his printer. And what it came down to is we had to reboot his router as well as his computers and printers. Because sometimes your network will just take out the lunch.
Well, the router, my router, I put on a week-long timer, and once a week it shuts off electricity while I'm sleeping to the router, comes back on before I'm ever awake, and life goes on from there. As far as computers, if you leave them running, you've got to periodically, at least once every 10 days, reboot them because they are collecting cobwebs, so to speak, and you need to clear that out. And the only way to do that is either with a reboot or a shutdown.
And of course, it's better to have everything shut down that's connected and then reboot everything together again.
Anyone else want to comment on this subject? Harry, what do you do? Leave your machine running?
The truth is, I got lazy in my old age. Once a week, I shut down the computer for 24 hours, usually Saturday night and Sunday afternoon, turn it back on. But there's no real reason for it. It's what I do. And on the router once a month, I shut it down. It's a gateway system from my internet provider,
Mhm.
So, it's easy enough, shut it down, wait a minute, turn it back on.
Yeah.
If you're talking about those combination gateways, the modem routers, the default is that they, at a certain time of day or night, will automatically restart themselves. And during that process, they'll pick up any firmware updates.
Well, usually I've got one of those routers, and I have problems during the day if I don't have it turn off periodically.
Yep. And for mine, it's just scheduled a certain time in the middle of the night. And if I happen to be binge watching something, I can reset that.
Yeah, that's what I had to do recently.
I'm pure wireless over here. So about once a month, I shut down the wireless gateway because it's
Yeah.
basically a cell phone. So I shut it down and then bring just it so that the IP addresses that the phone's attached to when they go in and out, because they're not standard, they can overrun the table in the router itself.
So you're saying that these IP addresses like to reset themselves.
When you reset the router itself, the wireless router itself, it resets them. Unless you specifically in protocol, if you got access to the protocol, make it permanent.
Yeah. So are you saying it's a good thing or a bad thing that they tend to change every time you restart?
Well, monthly or so, the IP address from the provider changes because they reboot their systems.
Usually they don't, but some do. And
Some
you may
do.
have. But now, as far as if you got printers that are not USB cable attached to a computer, and or you have NASA's and servers, those all require you to set up static addresses. That's just like your house address and like your phone number. Those seldom ever change, especially on the house. But if you don't and you leave it DHCP addresses, there are certain times when that'll change and suddenly you can't print or connect to your NAS or server.
My brothers, I'm going to beg to differ on that because both of my brother printers, one's an all-in-one and one's just a straight black and white, are sitting here wirelessly connected to the router. And all I have to do if something like that happens is turn them on and off, and they go right back to where they're supposed to be. And I can tell that because what I'll do is I'll get a print error on any of the machines I've got connected to it saying it can't see it or it can't print.
Yeah.
So if you have a more modern printer than a 70s or 80s HP, they take that all into account because that's how everybody in the world works now. So my printers are only two. Oldest one is 3 years old, and the newest one is 2 years old.
Yeah, so printers, you're saying, Pete, have something inside of them that at least attempts to maintain a static IP address.
Yeah. The networking actually needs the passcode from the router to connect to it, and then the router recognizes the not the IP address, the MAC number.
Okay, yeah.
When it first connects up. And the
Yeah,
MAC
the device
number
ID.
never changes.
Yeah, the device ID.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as that gets picked up consistently by your router or gateway, that's great. Not all routers and gateways are very good at doing that.
Right.
Understood. I happen to have a good system. Slow at times, but a good system.
You know, it's funny, Bob, that you mentioned that. I had a lot of trouble with my wife's printer just suddenly not being available. Unrelated, we changed the gateway, or the provider swapped out an upgraded gateway. All of a sudden, the problems with connectivity in the printer just disappeared. And I think it's what you're saying.
Better detection.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, Tim, you brought up setting a static IP address. I don't know if everybody in this group knows how to set up a static IP address on their PC. Is this something you could illustrate to us?
I should be able to.
Okay.
Hang on a minute here.
And just a little bookmark we want to put on. Earlier, we didn't make the distinction between UEFI and legacy boot.
Ah,
Let's just put a little pin on that.
Now, I gotta share the desktop. And have to get the right one. Ain't gonna work too well. Here's now this is 11, but 10 has similarities. And as far as setting the from DHCP to manual static address, that's a case where it goes back probably all the way to 95, maybe even Windows 3. So very little has changed. Now, I'm on Ethernet. I don't have my Wi-Fi attached. So I'm going to go to the Ethernet and I'm going to come down here, and it's showing me in 11 here, but usually in 10 you have to select the adapter, and that'll bring up a separate screen. But in here, I've got mine already set on IP4 because that's all I need. I don't have 6. I took it out from DHCP to a manual number. I set this number myself. You have to have a subnet mask. The last digit's 0, and the first 2 or 3 groups are 255. The third one here can be different, but that gets into deep water we're not going to get into. So normally you'd have all 3 of these, 255, 255, 255, and 0. Gateway is usually 192.168. Then the last 2 numbers will vary. Some routers will have a 0, some have a 1, some have even 10 or something like 254. And then the last digit is your device number, the number you want to attach to the router's gateway. I have 2 routers. One is a 0 first and then a 1, and the other one is 1.1. So that's another manual setting. Another one can be your DNS. You can leave it set to automatic, and it goes out to your ISP's DNS server, which usually has lousy performance. And I use a open public DNS, and so I set my to the primary and alternate DNS to the public one. And there's even some new ones I didn't know about fairly recently. So there's about 7 different public DNSs. But the DNSs for the public ones seem to be less prone to attacks compared to the ISPs, unless they're really diligent on their DNS servers. A lot of times in the past, bad guys have gotten into ISP DNS name servers and fouled the addresses to point to their bad sites. So that's a factor. But generally speaking, that's one of the, and I'd have to log in again on another machine to show 10.
Oh.
You want me to show 10?
No, I don't think that's. Does
Okay.
anyone need to see 10? Well, I see a lot of shaking heads, so no. Tim, you mentioned there about alternative DNSs. What are those?
DNS is when you type in a URL into your browser, it means absolutely nothing. You have to essentially have the computer go to a phone book, look up your URL address, and find out the phone number. And the phone number is an IP address. And IP4 has what's called 3-digit octets in a set of 4 numbers. The newer IPv6 has hexadecimal addressing, and it has, if I remember right, 6 groupings, and it goes way higher number of addresses that can be addressed. So it's used heavily in your phones, and it's also used by many ISPs that just don't have enough IP4 addresses and need to use IP6 for some of their customers.
Okay.
IP6 came around because it allows a individual number, IP address, for every single device on the world, including phones, refrigerators, washing machines, and that stuff.
Oh yeah,
So you needed IP6 to be able to do that.
right. For the time being, anyway. But the IP4 has a whole lot less that it can handle. But my ISPs so far use nothing but IPv4, so I use it too. And I don't need to mess with 6. I'm not going to gain anything. If, on the other hand, my ISP changed to strictly IPv6, I'd be out of communications till I changed all my systems to use IPv6 in place of 4.
Yeah, when I check to see what my devices are using and all these IP addresses, I find that just standard Comcast has both IPv4 and IPv6, but each device may also have both.
It doesn't hurt if you have both active and your ISP provides access by both protocols. If your ISP only provides one of the 2 services, why have the other one on?
That's right.
Is it just limited to that IP, that your service provider, ISP?
Yeah, it has
or is
to,
it the rest of the world?
no, it has to do with your provider. Whoever the provider is determines whether they're using still the IP4 only, or IP4 and 6, or just 6.
Well, if you're using as an ISP somebody big like Comcast, or in your case, Bob, it might be what, Verizon or FiOS or something
Well,
like that.
we have 3 major ones in our area,
Okay,
and those are Comcast, Verizon, and Astound, which used to be RCN.
okay. What I was getting at, not the particular names, it was more of if you're going with a big provider, would it not stand to reason that they're going to be using IPv6?
Not necessarily.
You
Yeah.
can run
Correct
into
about
local
not
variants.
necessarily, but the big companies are probably using it because they're in that protocol, right?
I'm using T-Mobile, and I just looked at my device,
and
and I
T-Mobile,
have IPv6 from T-Mobile,
right?
which
Because
is the
That's also used in the
Well,
telephone.
but locally, it's running on IPv4.
In other
Because
words,
you're
your
not
local
likely to have more than 255 devices locally
on your network.
on your network.
Right.
Okay.
See, there's a difference internally when you're into the router. Everything is just 192.168.0110.254. Then you have a dot, and then one for the gateway, and 255 for broadcasting. So anything in between 2 and 254 usually is available, but not always. And then it's your external address that's the IPv4 from the provider, or 6, or both.
And there might be some websites that have not yet upgraded to IPv6, but not terribly many.
Yeah, it all depends upon the size of the company. The bigger they are, the more likely they're going to have the IPv6, but they may still have plenty of users still on 4.
Right. Yeah, there are some sites that, due to the amount of traffic, I believe it was, decided they needed to add the IPv6, and some have even gone over to only IPv6.
Because the bigger the provider is, they break up their entire network into sections, so to speak. Well, some sections may be very, very old, and they were originally IPv4, so they left them that way because they're not having problems with it. But newer ones, they probably added the IPv6 so they could expand the number of addresses available to all their new customers.
Yeah, and just a tiny little sidebar: as homes get smarter and everything else, there are more and more connected devices, and eventually it's possible that even home networks may outrun IPv4.
Sure, not that's a very good possibility, but most people, even with smart home, several people with computers, etc., most of them, even with the IoT devices and phones, would not exceed the 256 limit of IPv4. But at the same time, there may be some newer things because more and more things like the appliances have smarts, therefore want to talk on the internet as well. More IoT smart devices for turning on and off lights, other appliances, etc. It all depends upon the individuals. Some of the younger generation probably have enough of a big family and enough smart devices, modern devices. They might need to have the IPv6 just because of their volume. Whereas with another person, myself for one, I don't have probably more than 100 items. What do I need 6 for?
Wow.
That's still a lot of items.
Oh,
That's
yes.
real-
But I mean, they're not all going at one time either.
Right. Let me kind of expand on this just a teeny bit. Is, at first when we were going on this discussion about how many IP addresses would you need in your house, and you were saying, why would somebody run out? And I was going, well, why would somebody run out of their IP addresses in their house? And then you touched on it where you're talking about the IoT devices that you people put in their house. And I will reflect back to my son or my friend who lives up in Wisconsin, where they changed out every light bulb in their house, including the recessed lighting that's in every room. And every one of those bulbs that they put in has an IP address, and they're individually addressable. And at first I thought, well, a person has lights in their rooms, they might only have a couple. But I remember when my son was putting in recessed lighting, he put in like 6 to 9 lights up in one room.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's say 10 per room, and he's got a dozen rooms. That's 120 no, 1,200
Add in your
lights per
washer,
room.
dryer.
That's just light bulbs.
Just add in your washer, your dryer, your refrigerator, probably the stove, maybe
Yep.
microwave oven. God knows what else
Okay,
beyond that.
External cameras.
let me jump in
Right,
here for a
cameras.
second.
So
Furnace.
at first I was struggling trying to figure out why would somebody run out of addresses, and I just answered my own question by thinking it through. And as Tim was saying, the younger people are embracing IoT much more than we are. They want the Internet of Things. They want it automated, but you have to make it automated. But they do it.
Yeah,
And you might have to. There's a lot of devices to make it all work.
and your
Pete, what are you
thermostat
waving
too.
at? Pete's got his hands up.
So IoT runs on 2.4 gig
Right,
rather than 5.8.
right.
Usually.
So usually, because they don't need the bandwidth, but they do need to have, they don't talk as often as a cell phone does.
Right.
Right,
So they don't pass as much data.
right.
So what you can do on your router at home, if you have the control, is change the IP subnet for the 2.4 gig and have a different IP. That's the third digit.
Now you're getting into a deep subject of subnetting.
So okay, different network.
You can do different
Not
networks,
subnetting.
but even
That
then,
way you have 255 IP addresses on the 2.4, and then you also have 255 on the 5.8, and all you have to do is change that third digit one number up on your own router.
yes, but I don't know how many people here would understand what you're referring to, besides myself.
How many people have more than 200 IP addresses in their house right now?
Not
Raise
me.
a hand.
Nope.
Okay, so
Not even me.
And
I've got two routers. I've got an old router and a new router. The old router's inside the new router, so to speak. And
So which one are you using
I can
for your-
subdivide those, just like you're
You
saying. I could
You
have
can.
different IP address ranges for 254 devices each.
You said you had an old router. What do you mean by old router? Give a rough number of years to it. 5, 10, 20, 100?
10, 15 years.
10 to 15. So I know we've discussed in the past about how long you should keep a router and when you should be looking to upgrade it.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't 15 years like well past that time?
There's the inside and there's an outside. I have an outside one that's much newer, and then I have the other one inside of my network. That's a big difference. It's not talking to the outside.
Is acting as a firewall for the other ones.
That's right. So it's actually a double firewall, but it's only a double firewall to one or two other segments of the internet inside the house. The master one has basically one, but I could have two segments there as well, doing some of this network manipulation that's over most people's head.
Yeah.
So
your router at the firewall is actually the DNS server for the other routers.
Right.
If
what
anybody
about a home network where people are putting home devices like the lights in? Is that a subnet?
No. Actually, IoT devices don't need to really talk directly to your routers. The reason that is a true statement is your normal network in your home, that's where you want your regular computers and stuff. When you are talking about an IoT device, your router should be set up with a guest account, which does not allow communications inside your regular network for your computers. It's an outside back door, so to speak, that is only governed by the firewall of that router.
Most of
He's
your
shaking his head.
IoT devices interface with this guy
Your phone.
directly via the Wi-Fi.
Right,
Your phone,
right.
your controllers are on here. So this is connected to your inside network.
Normally, yes,
And the IT
because
devices
it is
are all
a
connected to
computer.
that same network because they have to be.
It is
to
a
be able to
computer
control.
to begin with. So
I know
yes, you
that.
would have it phones, tablets, laptops, any form of desktop, servers, printers, all go into your normal network setup. But IoT devices don't need it. It can be a security risk. So you instead set up a guest account on the routers. You attach to the guest account all the IoT devices, and they bypass your in-home network and go straight out to the internet to talk to mama and papa, the manufacturer.
No.
That's it.
They talk to your controller device, which is on
That
your
comes
internal
back.
network.
That comes back from mama and papa.
If that's a Pete, that's if there is a controlling device. Some home network devices have a controller per se, and others are just straight independent. For
Right.
instance, if you bought a single light bulb, that's a smart light bulb, or an LED light strip that goes on the back of your TV, those are going to talk to your network, and that's about it. They're going to get their programming instructions, and you're going to tell it turn on, turn off at this certain time. But other devices, not so much.
Well, there's another thing. In your phone, when you're controlling devices, you're using an app. That app takes what you selected to do, turn something on, turn something off, goes out to mama and papa come back to your network, and that's how it gets activated.
I would say maybe 50% of the time, but the other 50% of the time is, especially when you're using this thing to fly a plane or a helicopter or a quadcopter, it's going direct to the quadcopter through the local network, the local Wi-Fi, because otherwise you would have too much latency.
Right.
So it's both. It is really both. And it all depends on the application.
Ooh.
If you're going to look at your stove from your work network across town to see what the temperature is on the stove, it's going over the internet. If you're not going to allow that to happen so that nobody can hack in and turn your stove on or change your refrigerator temperature to 60 degrees on the inside, then you don't need to have it go out to the regulation. It can just do it directly on the local network. And yes, you should have it isolated on a separate group.
Yeah, but most of the
like Tim is saying, it should be isolated in.
Most of your commercial stuff that you buy off the shelf at Best Buy, Micro Center, whatever, that stuff goes to mama and papa. Mama and papa say, go turn that on or turn that off with a signal.
I'll make a comment here. If you're paying mama and papa to do that,
No.
yes.
No.
If you're not paying mama and papa,
I'm not paying
then
mama and papa anything, but it's
hold
going.
on. Just calm down. Don't get excited over here, guys. This is kind of some,
you wanted this.
right?
Hey,
How about
if
we
I
get an understanding here that they're different approaches to get the job done, and they're both doing it this way, and we're going to conclude with the fact that it is kind of desirable, a good idea to set up a guest network for your IoT devices so that they don't conflict with, or I'm sorry, they don't act as a backdoor for bad actors to get in to talk to the other devices to get to your computers that are in the house. Or the things that the bad people that are out there want to do is they want to turn those into zombies so that they're doing things like computing and doing DNS attacks on other machines, even though it's just your little doorknob that opens up your only, what I want to say,
Front
even
door.
though it's just the controller for the doorknob that opens up your front door.
Right.
That little doorknob controller, that chip that's on there,
Well, see, I know
could be turned into a DNS server.
I have multiple devices from different manufacturers. When my internet's gone out, I have no control of turning them on or off. None of them.
Bob?
It was Sanford. What you were talking about was denial of service.
Right, DNS.
Not DNS.
DDNS.
I'm sorry,
DOS.
denial of service, not DNS.
DDoS.
Right, DDoS, right.
But DDoS is distributed denial of service. It's a particular kind. DOS is denial of service.
Right.
But
Okay.
anyway,
Thank you
I
for the clarification.
just want to make sure we were talking the same language here.
Okay. All right. Tell you what, we need to move. Oh, Bert wants to comment, and then I want to move on.
Just pointing or bringing up, there's this new standard of Matter, which is supposed to consolidate the way different devices work instead of them being independent. I wasn't sure if that affected how they talk to Wi-Fi or the phone or whatever.
I am not familiar
That
with.
means you're gonna have to buy new equipment.
I think the Matter standard with regard to IoT has to do with the protocols by which they communicate, by which they receive and
it is,
understand
too.
their instructions.
I think it is the protocol, and but it's still the protocol is subsection to internet protocols that are required to go out over the internet and get to mom and pop.
I guess they were saying that at Comdex that many of the new devices are all consistent with the Matter standard for new things being sold.
Right.
There's always an attempt to try to standardize IoT communication so
Right.
more different devices can interoperate.
Right.
But Matter tries to be backward compatible with some of the others, though not all. And they try not to be proprietary to particular manufacturers.
Right.
They were saying that sometimes they have the manufacturer's version and Matter now, so that you can pick which one fits to your situation, as
That may
opposed to only one choice.
That may occur more and more, that you will have choices. Right now, one smart TV operating system, for example, cannot interoperate necessarily with another smart TV operating system.
Yeah, it depends on the ages of the devices. The older the devices are, the more proprietary the communications is and the protocol used to control things. Whereas in the newer devices, more and more of them are using the Matter protocol, and maybe some of the most popular older devices that are still using the old code will also work, but not all of them.
Yeah, in order to get different manufactured, different brands and different families of brands to work better together, they're having to drop support for some of the lesser used older protocols.
Right.
Okay, let's, shall we jump into some of the, first thing I want to ask, does anyone have any
Dennis.
other questions? Dennis has his hands up. Yes.
I didn't think of it till now, but on yesterday's news, when they were talking about how iPhone to iPhone communications, text message communications are encrypted, and Android to Android text messages are encrypted. But Apple to Android are not.
Right.
So for example, if you have two-tier authentication, let's say with your bank, so that you contact your bank, they send you a text message. Let's say you have an iPhone, they send you a text message back via Android that's open to susceptibility by Chinese hackers to intercept that message and read that message. That's what
Technically,
actually
yes.
No,
wrong.
Yes, it
No.
is. SMS text by cybersecurity experts is classified as unsecured because there are so many that don't have the encryption active. And when I say active, say Sanford's got an iPhone. Let's say that I have an iPhone, Bert has an iPhone. The three of us can communicate. It's encrypted. If Bob Premick has an Android, Dennis has an Android, and Peter has an Android, and they talk together on the Androids, that's encrypted, except for real old devices, which still are being used on both iPhone and Android. Now, on the other side of the coin, what has opened up because of Google on Android is a new messaging standard that only just recently Apple has finally adopted. They kept blocking it, they wouldn't accept it. It's when I have an Android device and Sanford's got an iPhone, all bets are off. And that will continue to be the case unless both Google and Apple get together and say, when you're talking to the other device, have the encryption on too. But that requires the same type of encryption and encryption keys to be available to both types of devices. If you don't have the same keys and or the same encrypting code, then you're going to have a inability to have secure communications between iPhone and Android.
Now, is this separate from the difference between SMS and RCS messaging?
Yes.
Okay.
So does that mean
RTS was just recently adapted by
RCS.
iPhone, and it's a Google standard that was created in 21 or 22.
For RCS?
Yeah.
Okay.
So does that mean the two-step authentication? There's a slight gap there, or is it not really
It can
very
be
easy?
It can be intercepted potentially, and that's why cybersecurity experts say that is a very poor method of two-factor authentication because the message can be intercepted. They can get your number and log in instead of you making the connection.
But if they send me the code and I log in immediately, don't I
It,
eliminate?
you're immediately, and the hacker's immediate may be different. If you get in before he does, that's fine. If they get in
Oh,
before you do, tough luck.
huh.
I didn't know you were that rich, Dennis, that you had to worry about
Well,
hackers from another country
he's thinking of
stealing
communication.
your two-factor authentication to be able to set up a.
He's thinking of communications with his wife. He wants the
Actually,
he
this was
wants
an
the
FBI
encryption.
warning this
He
week.
wants the encryption.
But let me expound on this as my thinking is a two-factor authentication is going to come from a server from the bank,
Right.
which is talking to you when you first set up talking from your phone to the bank, if you will, is your first protocol. You're going through the app and it says, I'm going to give you you need to verify this is who you are. So I'm going to send you a text message to your phone, regardless if you're using your phone or your laptop to get into your bank. It doesn't matter. They're sending you more or less like a signal And you on your phone are going to say, yes, this is me, or no, it's not, or it's going to give you a 6-digit number to be able to plug in. One of the two scenarios. Sometimes it's just as simple as saying, yes, that's me logging in, and you hit OK, and it'll go ahead and permit it. You follow me? But
Yeah,
it may also send you a 6-digit number. You have to take that 6-digit number and then plug it in on your laptop to get access to your account. So from their servers to your phone that you got the text message is encrypted.
Be careful. Two different standards, and they may.
We're talking a server that is running licensed software to send out a secured message through SMS. It should be encrypted, but regardless, it's only sending you either a yes, this is me, or a 6-digit number. It's not sending you secured data that you're actually talking to your bank, meaning you're actually doing a transaction. You
Well,
don't need an SSL for that function, do you?
What
this is
if you
fine.
got a real large?
Let Bob answer, please.
This is fine, Sanford, as long as at no point along that network, your cell phone network or the SMS network, which is shared by carriers, as long as it's never unencrypted.
Right.
However, with SMS, because it uses a third-party service,
That's where
the message may be sitting unencrypted for a little while.
That's right. See,
and that is a risk.
That's the thing. No bank, no business does their own encryption on SMS text. They use third-party service, and there's only, I think, what is it, 2 in the country?
2 or 3.
2 or 3, yeah, in the country, whole country of the United States. Okay, and if there's any weakness anywhere along the line between your bank sending out that SMS text message and getting to your phone, you're dead meat.
In other words, there could be an unencrypted link.
Yes, somewhere along the line.
Could be.
Well, the FBI came out with the warning yesterday, so that's what made me ask the question. So
Right.
They thought it was,
and it's
they thought it was,
And Dennis, what do you think?
well, if the FBI comes out with it, I would think that they must. I think they would get some.
There's if you're going to use the phone in that way, the better two-factor authentication is through the apps that give you numbers and change every 30 seconds. And which case you really have about 1 minute to use that code, even though it changes within 30 seconds.
There is something called an authenticator app.
Right. There's
and
several.
Not very many banks are compatible with it.
Right. But that's for banking. But you do use SMS text messages for codes with a lot of online accounts besides banks and financial institutions. And bottom line is, these authenticator apps, there's a whole bunch of them. Google's got it, PayPal's got it, and a bunch of others. That's safer than the SMS text. There's no way of a weakness of getting the code. That code goes out to everybody. You type in the code at that given time, and it proves that you are the proper person.
What about Face ID?
What about what?
Face ID.
Face ID. Most people will shy away from it, except for maybe younger generations, mostly because of the fact that, hey, if you're the right race, it's okay. If you're the wrong race, it doesn't work well. If you're black, probably Indian, East Indian, and maybe even American Indian, I'm not sure, and Mexican, Latino, etc., you may have difficulties with face recognition. That's why it's not necessarily admissible itself in a court of law, whereas other things are allowed in.
But what about Face ID in terms of encryption is what we're talking about.
Well,
Well, there is
Level.
there is the emerging standard of passkeys for
Right.
websites, for anything on the web.
right.
And
But
passkeys are tied in with browsers as well as they have their own security. Microsoft, Google, Apple, and a few others have introduced passkeys, but they haven't got a standardized protocol just yet.
right. And see, the thing is, a lot of people find it an intrusion to use the Face ID, like hello under Windows. They don't like it because now they're giving away to anybody who can pick up that video image their site, what they look like, etc. So somebody else could be stalking, as an example. Say it's a woman and there's a male stalker. He can find out just from that alone, even though they're not like a movie star, an athlete of some kind, somebody that's on TV all the time, etc. They don't
They're
want to do
not
it.
keeping the picture, they're keeping the coordinates of your face.
I know what the
Yeah.
coordinates are,
Okay.
but that's not perfect.
Okay.
Anyway,
Let's-
the thing about on one more thing about Microsoft's implementation, a lot of this stuff, if you use Microsoft's version of it, you have to log in with a cloud account, a
Right.
cloud ID.
Right.
Now, Bert, I know you don't have any problem doing that,
But a lot of people
some
do.
people don't like it.
Yes.
Hmm.
That's a lot of people consider that an intrusion and they don't want it. And you still have, you won't have a problem. In fact, for everybody here, you probably won't have a problem using facial recognition IDs, but other people do. And it's been proven to be a fact. And it's known fact.
I will say that facial ID has been used for a number of years and or is an option on most of our phones. I know all iPhones have facial ability to unlock your phone.
Right.
You have a choice to set that up
And I
or
don't
not.
do
And
that.
generally that works good, generally, but it doesn't work all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm assuming that Samsung does the same thing on their phones that is on Android. You can have facial recognition used to open and unlock your phone. So it is being utilized in today's society, and it has pretty good success. I don't know, Bert, do you use facial
Well,
recognition to unlock
what
your
I
phone?
was asking about wasn't opening your computer or phone.
Mhm.
In different apps that I have, banking apps and things like that,
Yeah.
they have Face ID.
Hmm.
So you open the app and before it opens, it looks at your face, verifies it's you, and you're in.
Yeah,
I've never
and there's always
Okay, so
times in
they're
which
using-
this stuff can be abused. Go ahead.
Pardon?
The bank is using two-factor.
Right.
It logs
Right.
your permanent ID on your network card to know that the machine that you're asking for recognition from is in fact you, and then it connects that to your account, which is why every time you use a different machine, if you normally use your phone and then you go to your desktop or your own work desktop and you log into the app, you still use your password and everything, but it asks you to verify it's you either by sending you the text to a different device or for some other type of authentication, because it's verifying two-factor based on its own records.
Yeah,
And that's the same way with eBay and Amazon and the other shopping accounts. If you
Yeah.
log in from a different machine, it's going to ask you to verify the hard way.
I
Well,
agree.
And so
I
far,
think-
I have not had any but company or financial institution demand I have facial recognition.
They're not going
True.
to, because that would be on your device. The facial rec part is on your device and not on their servers, because that would be a violation of laws, especially in Illinois. Tom?
Okay, you're asking about facial recognition. Yes, my phone has that to Samsung. It also recognizes fingerprints.
Mm-hmm. There you go. That's another way. All right,
That's a-
we need to move on because I sent out all these great things and for topics tonight, and we're 3/4 of the way through our meeting. We haven't even touched on one. So there is one that I wanted to do a quick demonstration for, and that would be the very first thing.
Good.
Quickly spot a bogus USB drive, and I found this software. I don't know how I found this. On this website, but I can tell you that it works, and I'm going to be happy to demonstrate it. Just give me a moment to pull it up.
What is a bogus?
Too bad Drew King isn't here. He gave a presentation Sunday, and there's a lot more than just that one feature that you found on GRC.
Right. Okay. Let me
USB drive.
I'm going to tell you what that means. A bogus drive. All right. So when you go shopping, if you go shopping online, for those of us that do shop and spend money online, you may be tempted to purchase a USB drive that is like 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 terabytes, and you're going to be looking at this thing, and you're going to go, "Wow, look at that USB drive! Can you see that?
Yeah.
That is 2 terabytes right there in that little USB. Amazing." Well, then you get it home and you realize this is a POS because it's not working. Or you bought a micro SD or an SD card, same way. So this software called Validrive, which is free, was written by a guy that got miffed over the fact he was buying all these big micro SDs and USB sticks that didn't work.
This is Steve Gibson's site.
Right, from Gibson Research, which he's always done some good stuff. That's the person that did SpinRite.
Right, and that's another thing that has been changed, but you have to pay for it. And
right. Okay. So back to. I'm hoping you could see this Validrive program up on the screen.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is the program itself, and what you do is I plugged in my USB stick here, this wonderful 2 terabyte USB stick, and I tell it to check USB drive, and I click on this. So then what it's going to tell me is that first thing I want you to do, Sanford, is I want you to pull that drive disk out, and then I want you to reinsert it. So I did that. Drive is inserted.
Did you have to launch the software first, Stanford? Or?
Yes. Okay. You saw the software was up on the screen first.
No, it's only showing the advertisement.
Oh, it's only showing you the advertisement.
It doesn't have the extra screen. They're separate. You got to share your desktop to do this.
My bad. I'm sorry. Let me redo this, okay?
Yeah.
Let me do this. And now you should be able to see that. So,
yes.
Okay, got it.
Okay, I'll restart the application. Here's the application. It says check USB drive. See that in the bottom?
Right.
Okay, so I do that, and it will then tell me to pull the drive out, reinsert it. It's going to obtain information from the drive, and then I hit validate this drive. Now, this is a 2 terabyte drive, so this should take hours to do, right? No. This is how quick this software worked to determine whether or not this was a good drive or a bad drive. The green is good. The red is no good. So this quickly, I was able to find out this 2 terabyte drive was bogus. And that would mean that what often is done on these bogus drives is they'll take a 64 gig, somebody who's ever selling this, will take a 64 gig, a 32, 128, I don't know, gig drive, and they'll play around with the file allocation table or the NTFS or the EFAT, whatever you want to call it, for the sake of conversations, and they'll modify it so it looks like it's going to be as big of a drive as what they're trying to sell you. And so that's what happened here. But when you go to write data to it, it's not going to work. You'll fill up the very first, let's say 32 gigs, and then after that, nothing happens. It goes nowhere.
Sanford, it's worse than that.
What's that?
It continues to pretend to be writing to it, but it's not writing to it.
Absolutely. You are 100% correct.
And you think you backed up some data, and you didn't.
Right. So this is how good this product is. It tells you, you know, the declared size, how big it actually did. It gives you lots of good stuff, how much, you know, samples it did, but it really is fast. You know,
it's not introducing malicious software to your system. It's just not giving you what you paid for.
Right.
Exactly correct.
Okay.
And
now,
so this is
SpinRite is an old product. It was made for spinning hard drives, which most of us don't have much of use for anymore. But they modernized it just recently so that it also handles SSDs as well. But it's a paid-for product. There are other tools on Steve Gibson's site as well that can tell you your open ports and other susceptibilities. He is a cybersecurity expert. And he knows his hardware pretty well.
He knows his hardware. So, you know, I happened to pick up one of these USB sticks at a bin store, and I think I picked it up for like $1. Well, it was a waste of $1. But I have bought in the past, I have bought SD cards for my cameras that I thought were really big, and then I get them home and I try to use them, and they poop out on me, and I couldn't figure out why, and now I know it's because they were being sold to me as bigger than they really were, and they never worked.
Yeah, it's another one of these scams, frauds, whatever you want to call it.
Yep, somebody got some money out of somebody. I mean, I only gave them $1, but this was probably a lot more when whoever bought it and returned it to Amazon or wherever. Okay, I got some other things. Go ahead.
Can you actually test an SD card or?
Yeah.
With that
you want me to do that now?
Well, if you want, yeah.
You have to give me a moment to go get one, and I can test one. And give me a second.
Yeah, anyway, there's another thing that does happen sometimes with no-name SSDs and flash drives, and that is they advertise them as containing certain parts, for example, Samsung parts, but what these parts are is called binned parts, parts that failed quality control and are then reassembled by no-name companies with really cheap labor. And they'll also sell those. And those have a high failure rate. And also a high rate of just simply dead cells that you can't write to.
Okay, let's see.
So the moral of the story is you may be getting only what you pay for.
You are absolutely correct.
I mean, it sounds like, you know, when you have areas that are ravaged by a flood and cars are flooded, and then they somehow go out and they can resell those cars. They sell those cars again, you know.
No kidding.
Yep.
Okay, so I took a micro SD card and I just put it into my computer. This is a 128 gig drive. It's going to run a little bit slower because the interface it has to go through. Boy, a lot slower. Calibrating. There it goes.
Okay, there it is.
You guys are able to see this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can already tell it's good because the green goes all the way to the end.
Yeah, it's all the way at the end. It's all throughout it. So this one's working pretty good. So this is a micro SD card, a memory card, if you will.
Now, is this writing over whatever's on there, or just recognizing good space?
I don't know. It's not writing over on anything in the drive, as far as I know. I don't know the actual ins and outs on how this works. You could read up on it on their website to find out more.
Okay.
But this drive happened to be blank, so I didn't care.
All right.
So, but it's not like it's writing 128 gigs worth of data, because that takes time to do.
Yeah.
And it's not reading that, but I don't know the nuances and how it works, but it works.
Just
So as you can
guessing.
see here, this does work on a micro SD.
Just guessing. I think it's just validating the file system by going through the controller,
But-
and so it would tell you if the controller was not being honest with you, which is
Right.
what you're most concerned about. Or if the controller was simply a bad controller or bad firmware.
So you can see here, it shows that it worked. It shows the samples, the sizes, how long it took, percentages, blah, blah, blah. Work good. There you go. And I hope that answered your question, Dennis.
Yep.
Now, is this a free program?
Yeah, it's free. That's even better. Yeah, go to the website, download it, just put in your arsenal in case you need it. In case you run across a drive and it's not working right.
grc.com.
Yep.
The
The link is
right there.
The link is in your emails.
In your email.
Yep.
Oh.
Very first URL.
Yep, the very first one. I found this one to be very beneficial. And a good one to have is in your utility box. And believe it or not, I show that it works. Okay. I've showed you one drive that it failed on and a drive that it does work.
Thank you.
Okay, so now on the list here, there's a whole bunch of other things. Anyone want us to go through them? I think we talked about how often you should reboot your router.
What's the one? How to print a document when you don't own a printer? That sounds kind of ridiculous.
No, there are a lot of people. I've heard of a lot of people that don't have one. How can I get a document printed out? And the easiest way is PDF file.
Yeah, basically that's it. You have to turn it into a PDF, and I'm pulling up the article now.
Okay.
And I'll share the screen here.
Yeah, that problem goes back more than a decade.
And yep, save the PDF. That's exactly what you do.
Yep.
You print it to a PDF, or you could put a PDF program on there. But usually just printing to a PDF is all you need to do. And then you take that over to wherever and show them it.
Okay.
Many people don't have printers. My kids are one of them. They don't have printers.
Or you can email the PDF.
Yes, you can email it to yourself, and then you have everything you need. So basically, this is all saying the same thing.
Okay.
Save it to a PDF. You can always go to a place that has a printer, like a FedEx or a UPS store or your public library.
And
Those
also some of these office stores have
Right.
printing, but they may or may not charge. They usually do.
And there you go, Dennis. Now you know how to print when you don't have a printer. So we can all throw away our printers.
Yeah. Provided people have printers at work that nobody cares if they do a few more copies.
There's a lot of people, especially younger generation, the only computer they have is the smartphone. That's it. Now, how do you print it out from a smartphone? You either have to have a wireless printer of your own, and if they don't have any other computers, why even have that? When they go to work or to a friend's house that's got a printer, they can print it out.
Yep.
Or they need a friend.
And guess who the friend sometimes turns out to be?
It's going to be Pete. We're all flying out to Hawaii to get something printed.
One of us. Well, we'll just send him emails containing our
You know what?
PDFs.
It's cheaper if you send me the file. I'll put it in a flat rate box. Just mail it back. It'll be cheaper for you.
I was trying to figure out a way to get out to see you, but
Oh yeah, hop on board a plane and
I need to hop on a board plane and spend half a day getting there just to print out this one sheet.
All day. You got to take it nonstop to Maui.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because you can't go through Honolulu, because if you go through Honolulu, you're going to go through either San Francisco or LA.
Yeah.
We go to LA, that's a good idea.
Yes, it's time bomb in LA. Yeah.
Okay, so
Okay, what's next?
there's other stuff on the list. What else can we discuss, gentlemen? I'd say ladies, but there are none in the group.
Okay.
Oh, the cheapest airfare is from Las Vegas.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot
We
of
also-
flights between Hawaii and Las Vegas.
We also earlier were talking about scheduling things, and there is an item on scheduling an automatic shutdown in Windows 11.
Yeah, what was that? How to restart your PC?
Last item, final
Last item. Okay, yeah. Schedule a shutdown.
item.
Yeah, get there. There it is.
Several different ways to do it.
Okay. Part I want to figure out is how to make my router do a reboot once a week.
We did a little bit on that earlier, but we can circle
We
back.
discussed it, but I'll have to sift through my router settings, and I don't want to do that in a public forum. So
No.
I'll have to figure that part out. Sorry, I sidebarred that. So using Task Scheduler. I've never used this for this function here. Someone want to talk more on this? Press the Windows search key. That's Windows and ES. Type in Task Scheduler. Select the utility. Has anyone done this? No.
I've only done it under Linux at the moment, and only on one machine.
Okay. So I guess you create a basic task
Mhm.
here in Task Scheduler. It shows you how to do that. And you can you give it a name. In this case, they're telling it to do automatic shutdown. This is the name. Following the screen, you need to choose the task recurring frequency. Oh, once. Okay, how often you want it to do this?
Every 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. And then you give it the time. You have to give it in military time.
Yes, military time is required.
And then the next time you start the program and run next, it's going to do it, right?
It should. You want to try it?
No, because if I do that, it should mess up my our recording here. I'm not going to do that now, unless someone else wants to try it. Well, wait, you have to do this in a PowerShell or?
No.
No, there are different methods that they are showing us.
Okay, I see.
There's about 6 or 8 different ways to do this.
Always. Bob, have you ever done any of these automated services?
I have set up the desktop shutdown during the time when the fast startup I didn't allow a full shutdown. It still doesn't. But I no longer leave fast startup going on
Okay.
Windows computers. Lots of different reasons, but one of them has to do with using Linux on the same machine.
Right.
But to get a full shutdown, which is sometimes needed for some tasks, or to complete some tasks in Windows, you can make a shortcut on your desktop that is simply a true off button. And that uses some of these techniques as well.
And this is Task Scheduler.
And then it will show you the PowerShell way. And
So why would I want to do this? Tell me, can someone give me a scenario here why I'd want to set up an automated shutdown of my machine?
Well, suppose you're running a backup, and you want that to run in the middle of the night.
Okay.
Your machine may be able to set it up so the machine not only shuts down after the task, but also will start up in order to do it at a certain time. There are some
Maybe
Windows.
you want to keep your kids off the machine.
Yes, there's some Windows There's some
Trust
what was
me,
it?
Bert,
Windows housekeeping was what I was saying.
on the idea of keeping your kids out of it. You can shut it down automatically. All they got to do is push the power button, it comes back on.
Yeah, that's why you have to set. For that, you have to use the parental controls and set the times when that computer can be used.
Right. That's completely
And
different.
pretty much every fifth grader knows how to overcome that.
I
Well, like you said, they show you several ways in which you could do this.
Yeah.
In here. Lots of them. Keyboards, you know,
Shortcuts.
yeah, shortcuts. So there's many ways.
Oh yeah. If anybody is aware of auto runs created by I forget the guy's name now, and Microsoft.
Rasonovich.
Yeah, and it was bought out by Microsoft years and years ago.
Yeah, that's the sysinternals suite.
Yeah, and the other is Glare Utilities. It has a feature. Both of them will show you anything scheduled or running in your system. And if you want to only focus on the scheduling, you can do that. And you'd be amazed how much automatic stuff is set up in every one of our computers. It's just mind blowing how much automatic tests are set up.
Of course, there's the startup programs too.
Everything. It's just now. You talk about Task Manager.
Well, just no. When when you have startup in your setup in your system for certain things, well, usually in a new system, it puts it on automatically, but you can see it in Task Manager.
Well, Task Manager gives you a limited view. Auto runs shows you anything and everything and allows you to control it too, if you want to shut it down.
And you can also view your startups in MS Config.
And same with MS Config services. You also have Glare Utilities that can show you and allow you to control your scheduled tasks as well as running tasks, such as your startup folder.
Yeah, CCleaner also has a startups tab.
Has that too.
And these will, each one of them will show in a different way, and they may show different things.
Right. And they're not all exactly the same looking. They're giving you basically much of the same information, and they give you control of manually disabling them or enabling them if they're disabled. So you can turn one off, see what happens. If you don't notice any problem, you can go back into the schedule task and see if it was automatically turned back on for you, or it's off and you can leave it off because it's not going to harm anything. If you take your startup folder, turn everything off, disable them all, reboot your computer, it will automatically turn on ones for your security, Windows Defender, and other items because they are security related, and it will turn them on. Everything else that was turned off stays off, and that makes boot up time quicker.
Yeah. There are
I'm always afraid that if when you're doing certain things like shutting down, that some things have to close.
Yes.
In the right way.
Right.
Otherwise, you may corrupt some files.
That's true. But sometimes you're also given an option of a forced shutdown because it's not shutting down. And that's your option, whether you do a forced shutdown and take a gamble, or you leave it go for some period of time. And if it still hasn't shut down by itself, then you're only got two possibilities. You say force shutdown, or you hold the power button for more than 10 seconds, and that takes it down.
Yeah, and holding that power button is much more likely to corrupt files
Yes.
than doing
A force
inside the
shutdown.
operating system shutdown command.
Right. At least the shutdown, force shutdown, if it's should come up, is trying to give you an option of shutting it down with a likelihood everything will be a-okay. But there's no guarantee. It depends upon what it is that will not shut down when you ask the machine to shut down.
Yeah, I have very seldom had a situation where Windows just would not shut down on its own.
I've had a few, but I mean, they're scattered over a long period of time.
Yeah.
It's only comes up maybe once or twice in a given year.
Yeah, I've had it happen in Linux, but not so much in Windows. But anyway, let's see, what are we doing? Okay.
Are we looking for a new subject?
Well, we already were talking about shutting down the router
Right.
and how often should you reboot the router. It looks like the article is talking more about reasons why you would.
Yeah, usually my case is because somebody can't get on the internet and something's goofy.
Yeah.
I still often am plagued at home, and I've never been able to figure this one out, where by usually it's my 5 gigahertz channel will lose connectivity to the internet. And I have no idea why. And sometimes it comes back by its own, and other times it requires a reboot. And I've never been able to figure this out. It's something that's been creeping up for years. And it could just happen one after another, or it might be a month apart.
It's the military.
It's a what?
It's the military. That's all.
Oh, well, that could very well be. You know,
notice something? We're 7 days away from Trump, and I haven't had a breakup on the connection all night.
Amazing, amazing. Has anyone else got a thought on why?
Sam, did you mean a reboot of the router or reboot?
Yeah, I usually wind up rebooting the router.
Okay, not the device, but the router. Okay.
Yeah, it's usually the router that I have to reboot, because that is where it will say it'll be connected to the router. I could talk to the router, but in my if you look on your computer, you look down where it shows the connection, the wireless connection. This is always wireless. The 5 gigahertz, will say 5 gigahertz connected, no internet.
Mm-hmm. Look at your connection table and see how many people are actually logged in that haven't logged out.
Connection table.
Phones going
in the router?
In your router. You can go into settings and you can see everybody that's logged in.
Right. I can see all the lists. But you're saying that it will, I guess I'm not understanding. What do you mean people logged out?
Okay, I have my router set up, especially at work, that if the device didn't stay on for a full 24 hours, it would totally disconnect that device and make it log on straight again, new.
Ah, okay.
So if you've got persistent connections on devices.
Yes.
And the devices get a new IP address from wherever they're getting their, let's say it's your phone and you're connected. Let's say you've got a bunch of phones going in and out because of family and that.
Mm-hmm.
And family and friends because they hand out the router ID.
So because it's not releasing, quote unquote, releasing,
they stay in there, and then the router can't hand out anymore.
Okay. So they're stepping on each other and it doesn't know what to do?
What?
So they're stepping on each other and they don't know what to do?
Correct.
Okay.
Because if you
However,
can't,
isn't there a
it's only got
place,
the 250 or whatever that it's allowed to do, and because it's time creep, you're running up to the end of that number that it can actually allocate. I
Okay.
used to run into this with the maker group,
Uh-huh.
and then I turned it to a 48-hour term. If you weren't connected for 48 hours, you got disconnected.
Okay. And that's a
And
setting
then
I can do in the
all the computers that are connected via wire, so they don't have to worry about that.
right. It's only the Wi-Fi portion.
It's only the Wi-Fi.
So you set this up in one of your rules?
isn't there a
In the,
place
in the
where,
rules on the router.
Router rules.
isn't there a place where you can control how many
Yes.
will be given access? Because if I remember correctly, my previous router and modem were two separate pieces, maybe 6, 7 years ago. And it defaulted to a really small number, 11 or 12 or something. And when I called, they said to me, oh, you have to change that to something like 30. I don't know if the new gateways work that way, but at that time,
Yeah, it's in the same spot.
So
Basically.
Pete, when Sanford reboots his router, he's setting it back to 0 again, I guess.
Yes.
Correct.
And then everybody has to relog in, or all
Right.
devices. And that could very well be, maybe I got some devices that are being wonky and they're not logging out and logging back in, or they're like disconnecting and reconnecting to the router.
IoT devices could be another one that stays on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
And those will try to reconnect if they get disconnected.
Right.
And more than likely, that is where my problem lies, is some rogue IoT devices that I just have not been able to figure out which ones. I'm going to have to systematically go through them all and blah, blah, blah. But, okay,
what we're
that's my
saying-
issue.
what we're saying from a moment ago, Sanford, is see if you can find out where the number of connections, that simultaneous connections that it allowed defaults to.
Okay,
I don't remember, I have no clue where I saw it, but in my previous system, it defaulted to something like 11 or 12, and I had to change it to much higher. I now have a completely different one, and it's never come up, so
I will have to see if that's a setting in my router. I got to do some more digging around in there. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Anyone got one more question from my list? Yes, Bert.
I don't know, it's not really from your list.
Okay.
I was just wondering if there was a limit on how many Bluetooth devices you can connect.
Anyone know?
I think
Each
so, but I
Bluetooth
don't know.
protocol has a different maximum number.
Huh.
And I think it goes per device, unless you're talking about connecting via Bluetooth to get either internet or a connection to your router.
Yeah, and I think you're right on that. Like your headphones per se, the ones you're wearing, even though those are wired ones, but if they were wireless, depending upon the protocol, they may be only able to connect to one device at a time. And the connection device may only be able to connect to one sender, one receiver, his headphones being the receiver, and the computer being the sender. Maybe that
Well,
can
I
be
show
connected.
5 items on there, but I can't seem to get any additional ones. And I don't know if it's because there's a limit or if it's just because I have so many neighbors using Bluetooth.
I think there is a limit.
I think there is a limit, but I have no memory of what it was. And I think it changes based on the version of Bluetooth you have.
Yeah, it does. And Windows may have a setting for maximum number of Bluetooth connected devices.
That's possible.
And I think that's why even the Bluetooth keyboard and mice have their own dongles now, so they get a channel straight.
Right.
Well, I usually have to use a wired mouse because I can't get anything else or my Bluetooth mice connected.
You can get rid of a Bluetooth device. That would give you one more opening.
Well, I didn't know if that would make a difference or not because again, I don't know what the limit is.
Well, you can unpair one that isn't going to hurt you. Try something else.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, we've reached our 9 o'clock hour, and I'd like to thank everybody for attending tonight's meeting. I'm going to stop our recording.
Record.